Now study tips and advice on attempting tutorial and workshop questions to improve your learning. My first advice is to know the role of tutorial and workshop questions in your learning. What are they truly? No doubt, they are practice questions often taken from the textbooks to help you build on what you have learned during the lectures. A good analogy for this would be that in the lectures, they teach you how to stand up, but ask you to walk for the tutorial and workshop problems. Of course, support is available during this learning stage. For example, discuss any problem encountered with a tutor or the workshop coordinator at the end of the class. But once you learn how to work without help, you will be required to run for your assessment tasks because you will have to submit your work before the due date, where your main objective is to obtain the highest possible score in all your assignments. Hence, don't skip your tutorial or workshop, whether it's face-to-face or online through Zoom. The learning mechanism through the tutorial or workshop practice problem is mainly about exploring, discovering, and finding how your acquired knowledge from the lectures can be applied to solve new problems. This process involves learning through trial and error, that is, you are free to make mistakes, but must learn from them. And can be iterated as, first, referring to the theories and examples from the lecture notes, second, working together with a study partner during the tutorial or workshop time, third, discussing the problem with your instructor, and lastly, verifying your solutions when the tutorial answers are released by the subject coordinator. However, you should understand that those questions are not meant for heavy practice, in the sense that practice makes perfect, because there are only a few of them, say 3 to 5 questions per problem sheet, and the selected problems might have been formulated or written in a unique format which requires you to solve all of them using different methods. In this case, quality learning is preferred over quantity learning. To illustrate this point, let's say that a year 10 student would need to attempt 200 mathematical problems before he or she can learn basic differentiation. As a college or university student, you would get at most 2 questions on advanced differentiation to practice in your tutorial problem sheet for Calculus 1, and in less than 1 week, they expect you to learn advanced differentiation based on those 2 questions only and submit an assignment with tough differentiation problem. So, with those 2 questions only, you can't learn advanced differentiation skills like the year 10 student would have done, and you still have to submit your assignment. The way to overcome this problem is to learn how to extract the same amount of understanding or information from those 2 tutorial questions as you would have done if you solved 200 similar differentiation problems. For example, you could write step-by-step instructions in your own words on how to solve each question, like step 1, step 2, and step 3. Then you just have to remember the format of the questions and follow the instruction to get the answers. For example, for this question, which chart do I use to read my values from? Or what are the assumptions made? Or how do I verify the validity of those assumptions? More importantly, most professors will never ask you to memorize complex equations given in the lecture notes, but will certainly want to test your skill on when, why, and how to apply them to solve mathematical or engineering problems. Writing step-by-step instructions here might also help you. Here is a question taken from a mid-year examination of particle mechanics and processing subject. My step-by-step instruction would look like for this question. Step 0. Read the questions multiple times. Step 1. Clearly understand what the question asks you to calculate, and in this case, I need to determine the settling velocity of the particles. Perhaps defining the terms hindered settling velocity here might help me understand what is going on in the question. Step 2. Use the encircle equation to calculate GA, the Galileo number. Pay attention to the unit of diameter, which should be in meter and not microns when substituted in that equation. Step 3. Once GA is calculated, find the range in which it lies and select the correct correlation that defines the calculated GA value. Step 4. Apply correlation and evaluate REP from calculated GA value in step 3. Step 5. Use the equation for REP encircled in red to evaluate Umax, the settling velocity of particles. Step 6. Use the Richardson-Zaki approach and calculate the exponent n from REP using this equation. Step 7. Evaluate the heated settling velocity using this equation where epsilon is a voidage and not the volume taken by the particle. Step 8. Verify the assumptions made using theories from the lecture notes. For example, does the velocity calculated make sense? As a closing statement, learn how to write those step-by-step instructions and then become a smarter learner. And lastly, you should review and revise all the questions when the full solutions become available online. Pay close attention to the methods used in the tutorial or workshop answer sheet to get the final answers. Sometimes they differ from the methods applied in the work examples or the lecture notes, and you should try to determine why they differ. And don't forget to write a short summary of what you have discovered after doing those practice problems, together with a list of personal questions to solve any ambiguity. Finally, place a comment next to each question like easy, needs to be reviewed, interesting, questions for tutor, to facilitate the revision process during the examination period where your stress level will be at its highest peak. After spending 5 years at my university, I observed that the tutorial and workshop practice questions have different impact, meaning and purpose to me depending on the time I chose to attempt them. As such, before my scheduled tutorial or workshop class, reading the question would be a preparatory work so that I could familiarize myself with the content of the lesson and would therefore feel more comfortable in participating in any activity or discussion organized by my instructor. During the class itself, attempting the tutorial or the workshop practice question would serve the goal of comparing my solution with my study partners and then discussing the problems encountered with the instructor. I enjoy collaborative learning as I often learn more about a chapter through group discussion than when I study alone. After the class, reviewing the full solutions of the questions will help me verify my answers and solve any ambiguity related to the methods used to get the right answers. I consider this activity as a revision work to help me become more exam ready. As conclusion, I personally believe that the impact, meaning and purpose of tutorial and workshop practice questions for before, during and after the class should be respected to make your learning more effective. Missing one group in this diagram might make it harder for you to study a chapter and eventually influence your grades. So be wise to prepare for every class, prioritize collaborative learning during the class, and revise all the tutorial questions, or otherwise, you might kiss goodbye the high distinction you are aiming for this subject. Therefore, as mantra, you should say to yourself, I must always prepare, discuss, and revise all the tutorial and workshop questions to make my learning more effective. As a summary, attempting the tutorial and practice question is key to getting a good score in your assignments. As advised, we discuss the role of tutorial and workshop questions. Second, we discuss the mechanism of learning through the tutorial and the workshop questions. Third, we elaborate on the fact that those questions are not meant for heavy practice. And lastly, we discussed the importance of reviewing and revising all your answers. And as mantra, you should say to yourself, I must always prepare, discuss, and revise all the tutorial and workshop questions to make my learning more effective. That was all for study tips and advice on attempting tutorial and workshop questions. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next video.